Hey there, this is Chris again. So I've got a special guest with me today, Jared Eastley, and he has a lot of experience and wisdom to share with us. He is a pilot and has been a pilot for a number of years, and so I'm very excited to hear some of the wisdom he has to share and some of the experience. But maybe to start, just to kind of break the ice, I wondered what is the worst experience you've ever had with like turbulence?
All right, well, that's an interesting one. Thanks, Chris, for starting this out easy. Um, I've had quite a few very alarming experiences with turbulence for sure.
Oh,
Um,
not good.
one, yeah, I mean, we could tell turbulence stories all day. I've had some really bad turbulence going into the mountains in the Rockies, like in the Colorado Rockies, like going into Aspen or Telluride. Some really unexpected stuff. But the probably the funniest one was we were heading into I think it was somewhere in South Dakota of all places, and it was a not there weren't really any signs of bad terms, but there's a little bit of a buildup in front of us. We're flying a King Air, we're on arrival coming in, and I was telling the guy I was flying with that yeah, there's some guys that probably go around this, but um, they're a bunch of sissies, right? That's kind of basically
Yeah.
what I said, you know. And so we go
Oh,
through this buildup, and we get the crap beat out of us. I mean, we got knocked around. It was nuts, and
wow.
it was crazy. We got just the crap beat out of us with this turbulence, and it went on for oh, I don't know, a minute or two. We
Oh no.
landed, and the back of the airplane was just a complete mess. It was a disaster.
Wow.
Um, we have some bins with food and drinks and stuff in them. They were destroyed. Uh,
Really?
the the the
So,
the the life raft was like instead of in the back tucked in the back, it was like in the aisle between the seats. I have no idea how it got there. And it took me
wow.
literally an hour and a half to clean up the back of the airplane. But we were
Oh,
empty. The good thing was we did not have any passengers on board yet.
oh, smart man. I tell you what, I thought it was all fun and games until one day we hit some turbulence and then flying wasn't as fun after that. Like I never knew how far you were going to drop, 50 feet or 1,000. I don't know, but yeah, it's
Usually
interesting.
that's not what the experience is. Usually pilots are pretty good at avoiding that stuff.
Yeah.
Usually, but sometimes you get unexpected turbulence, and it's just what they call clear air turbulence, CAT, clear air turbulence, and it's just you can't see it coming, but there it is suddenly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think I've told you before, I was trying to get my pilot's license and one of those little Cessna 182s and very interesting experience. I kind of let that go. Turbulence, I don't like at all. So this is I was flying under the clouds, partly cloudy day, and so this would be my flight plan, like avoiding all the clouds. Yeah, I don't think that works.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I remember back when I was in training, I was doing a cross country, and I was flying back south along the Wasatch Front, and we were abeam Salt Lake City, kind of along the mountains, and there's a bunch of bad storms coming through. And I was in a little Katana. That aircraft, the first model was a powered glider, and we're flying along, and it was like a bug in a vacuum cleaner. And we told ATC that we're going to be up and down about 4,000 feet, which was the case.
you're
That
kidding.
was not that was not a
That
great ride.
No, that's not good. Well, we appreciate your time. We would love to hear your experience, your recommendations, and however you want to start. If you want to talk about all the different jobs in aviation, however you want to structure it would be great.
Sure. Well, I made a few lists, but just to start off with, just kind of tell you a little bit about me, my background. I've been a professional pilot for about 25 years. I started my flight training when I was 21 years old in Provo, Utah. It took me about a year and a half to get from nothing to being a flight instructor. I went through, got my private pilot license, my instrument rating, commercial license, and flight instructor certificate. I taught for 2 years as I continued to build my credentials. Moved up to Boise, Idaho, where I got a job flying cargo for a company called Western Air Express, flew the Metroliner and the Cessna 402 flying cargo. That was a great experience builder. Flew a lot at night, flew old crappy equipment, did some crazy stuff. Um, these old airplanes didn't have much in terms of like weather radar or some stuff, stuff like that. And I'd be flying single pilot in a Cessna 402 from like Twin Falls down to Salt Lake, and I'd hear the airliners uh, deviating around the buildups, and I didn't know where they were, and I was just going right through everything, and
Oh no.
guys were holding, and they didn't want to go into Salt Lake, and I'd be the first one to try it, and it was anyways. I had all kinds of crazy experiences. One was in the 402 that was not a pressurized cabin, and
Wow.
so I remember one time I was sick, and my ear canals and everything, my sinuses are all plugged up, and so I did not want to go high. i
Yeah.
i stayed low. And short story is I had to go from Idaho Falls to Pocatello to Twin Falls and then back down to Salt Lake City because the other pilot got in a car accident. I had to take his route, and so I had to basically do what they call scud run it, where I stay low, and I had a little handheld GPS,
Wow.
and so I'm flying along at about 1,000 feet above the ground with a handheld GPS in my hand, weaving through the mountains basically, and flying really low to get down to Salt Lake City. And that was absolutely crazy. But
Yeah.
anyway, 6 years doing that, lots of stories there. Went out to North Bend, Oregon, flew the Merlin 4C, which is the Metro 3 and corporate configuration, did that. Flew EMS, that's emergency medical stuff, flying patients to hospitals and whatnot, and did charter. Um, did that for a year. Then I went out to Wichita, Kansas, and flew for a place called Eagle Med. Was with those guys for about 6 years, flying the King Air C90, C90A. Went up to Sheridan, Wyoming. Was in Sheridan for roughly a year. Flew the Conquest, doing charter and EMS. Then I went to flight safety in Wichita, and I taught at flight safety, taught the King Air 200 and the King Air 350. That was an awesome experience. Learned so much. Had all kinds of great experience. Became 10 times the pilot I was before teaching it. Got tired of that. Went and flew for a place called Wheels Up. Got hired as a captain of Wheels Up. Flew the King Air 350 for about 5 years, and now I'm at FlexJet. Got hired there last November. I'm flying the Embraer Praetor 550, 650, which is an awesome airplane, by the way. It's like Star Trek. um, yeah, it's just got these beautiful displays, and it goes up to 45,000 Mach 0.83. It's got this incredible interior kitchen, amazing bathroom. It's got a
Really?
side stick instead of a yoke, and then it has a little tray that like pulls out so you can like eat your lunch and stuff sitting up there. And
It's not like
and
the Delta flights then, huh? The Delta planes.
it's kind of like the Airbus. The Airbus has a side stick,
Oh,
so you don't have this yoke in your lap, so you have
oh,
space
nice.
right there to work. But
So
yeah,
before you got to the kind of the commercial jets, I wrote down year and a half, 2 years, 6 years. So you were about what, 9, 10 years before you started flying commercial?
well, commercial basically means you're flying for hire.
Yeah. Well, I mean the
And
commercial
so
um,
and
Delta
so
type
like
flights.
um there's so many different types, the nuances with what kind of flying you're doing. I mean, I flew cargo for 6 years, and I did charter and EMS combined, and then with starting with Wheels Up, that's basically um it's kind of like Uber or Lyft, only it's with airplanes. You buy a membership, and they have memberships that cost between 10,000 and 100,000. You get on the app, you say, hey, I need a flight from Los Angeles to Salt Lake City or whatever, and we got Wheels Up's got King Airs, they've got jets, and they'll get to where you need to go, and it only costs about between $6,000 $12,000 per hour for flight time to go there, depending on the aircraft type.
That was
Um,
very reasonable.
right, yeah, chump change, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then FlexJet's a little bit different. You actually buy shares in the aircraft, so most of the people we fly at FlexJet are considered owners. These are
Okay.
their airplanes, and
Huh.
so
Very
yeah.
cool. So a lot of experience, flying. So if you were in the cockpit, maybe I would feel safer on the flights I take.
Well, everything does entirely depend on the pilot. Um, and I wish I could tell you that all pilots were awesome. Uh, when I was instructing at flight safety, it kind of destroyed my confidence in pilots in general. But it depends on what level of aviation you're talking about. When I was teaching the King Air 200, that's an aircraft that does not require very much training at all. There's not a type rating. There's not a check ride. You don't have to pass a special test to fly it. And so, frankly, a lot of the King Air 200 pilots that we had come through there were fairly lousy pilots. I was very unimpressed in general with most of those guys. And when I taught the King Air 350, that was a step up where you have to get it what they call a type rating. You have to get certified to fly that airplane. There's required training. You have to pass this check ride, this test. And so the caliber of pilots, the caliber of training, and caliber of professionalism was much higher. And so the bigger the aircraft, the more complex the aircraft, the better the pilot is likely to be because they have to be able to pass certain standards in order to be certified to fly that airplane.
Right. So if you rely too much on automation, it makes you a weak pilot, I guess, huh?
Well, that could be a problem. I mean, we get especially these days, guys are learning to fly and they're starting out with very advanced cockpits and they are relying on that automation from the beginning. We've had some really regrettable airplane crashes where uh, the automation was not working right, and we have something we call levels of automation, where the highest level of automation, where everything's completely automated, and then you can step it down to where there's no automation. And
Hmm.
part of being a good pilot is to know what level of automation is appropriate based on what's going on. If the automation is not doing what it needs to be doing, your first priority is what we call flight path management, making sure the aircraft goes where it's supposed to go. And so if the automation is not performing correctly, you need to step it down, maybe hand fly it, and do everything manually to make sure the aircraft is going where it needs to go in the right manner, the right speed, etc.
Right. Huh, interesting. There's so
Yeah.
much. We could probably talk for days and days and hours. But if you were talking to, a senior class, a bunch of high school students, um, what would you say as far as different choices, maybe what you would do differently, different options they have, as far as aviation goes?
Well, the reason I got into aviation to begin with was, I was 21. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew I didn't want to be, hope this doesn't offend anybody, but I didn't want to be sitting in an office indoors for the
That's
rest of my
me.
career. I wanted to be out and about. So my dream, my dream was to go to Alaska, be a bush pilot, and be a writer. You know, and I have not been to Alaska yet, but I have published some books, and so that part came true. But it's been a lot of fun getting around. I've been all over North America. I've seen some places. It kind of becomes anticlimactic as a pilot because yeah, you go to all these places that people get excited about, but I don't get to see the cool stuff. All I
Yeah.
see is the inside of the airplane, the airport, and the hotel. And
Yeah.
so it's not the exotic lifestyle that a lot of people envision it.
Hmm.
Um, I- there's a lot of ways to approach it. Frankly, I find myself generally trying to talk people out of being a pilot. It takes a special kind of mentality to do this. And for someone who wants to raise a family and um, who really it's tough. It's tough on a family. Let's put it that way. And most of my career, I've taken aviation jobs where I was not gone a lot. I did EMS where I was home every night. I did flew for smaller companies where I wasn't gone for days at a time, and so that was a lot easier on family life. Unfortunately, those jobs that are more local do not pay very much. Not they
Hmm.
don't pay nearly as much. So
Hmm.
yeah, I could go and fly for some mom and pop place. I could go fly cargo. I could go do something like that, but I'm going to make half the money. And so um, at this point, I got a wife and 8 kids, and I've got to bring home the dough. And so now I'm flying for FlexJet full time. I also fly part time on the side. I do contract flying for an ethanol company out of Wichita, flying a King Air 350 single pilot. And so I got 2 jobs flying, which is it's cool because in my situation I get to fly the jet and also stay current and proficient in turboprops. So that's kind of cool.
Hmm. So
Forgot
what
what your
I'm,
question was.
yeah, so what I hear you saying is some of the drawbacks is being a international or maybe more regional pilot. It's hard to have a family life. It's hard to be home every night and get paid what you need to pay as a pilot. If you stay local, you don't get paid as much. So that's the hard side.
Yeah,
It's
the
it's hard to
bigger,
have.
yeah, the bigger, the faster, the further your airplane goes, the more you're going to be gone.
Yeah,
So that's the drawback. It's the time, speed, distance equation. You fly a bigger airplane that goes really, really fast and goes really, really far. That's where you're going to be gone longer and longer. And then your kids don't see you. You don't see your wife. And like the guys that I've met, um, like when I was teaching at flight safety, I met lots of guys who had impressive resumes. They'd flown all kinds of jets and big fancy airplanes, but they were also on their third or fourth marriage.
yeah, yeah. So how do you
And
bet? Oh, go ahead.
it was quite frankly disgusting. Guys like at Atlas and these places that fly to Hong Kong all the time, they would talk about um, going to houses of ill repute and just I mean you're gonna meet lots of great people in aviation, but also you're gonna meet people who have very, very deplorable moral standards as well.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Got
Do
it.
you want to
Close the
close that
window.
window? Yeah.
All of a sudden, you got pretty bad glare there.
Yeah, there we go. So that's the hard part. What part do you love about your job, about your current pilot job?
Obviously flying the airplane is pretty cool. That helps at all.
There you go.
I enjoy the flying itself, uh, taking the runway and pushing those power levers forward, and the auto throttle takes it, and you're riding a rocket. Uh, Takeoff and landing is really neat. I enjoyed the actual job flying. I really enjoy being with most of the guys I fly with. Not everybody, but most of the guys. What I really dislike the most is at the end of the day going to a hotel.
Yeah, away from family.
Yeah.
But doesn't your schedule allow maybe you fly for a week and then you're home for 2 weeks? Isn't that how they work it?
Um, well, like a wheels up, I was gone 8 days, home 6, so it's an 8 and 6. I could do the 8 and 6 here where I'm at now. I chose to do the bidding schedule where you basically bid a schedule, which has not worked out as well as I would hope. I was hoping to bid it so that I'd be gone longer, but then be home longer. That's a big conversation right there. And that's a good point too. Like in any career, you sometimes you end up places that you had not expected, and you find yourselves in situations you don't like that were not anticipated.
Yeah, yeah.
So you just have to try to find a
So
place that's a good fit.
so how do you manage that balance when you're gone? How do you feel like you stay connected with your family? You are somewhat engaged. I mean, it's just phone calls and I mean, how do you
I do
stay
make
connected?
some I do make some phone calls. The fact of the matter is I get home. If I've been gone 8 days, I get home. I'm rather an emotional wreck.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a sad person. I am.
Well, I can
But
imagine.
there are if you try to hide from that, and I mean there's ways to deal with that that are constructive. Just kind of on a religious note, I found that if I really focus, like my downtime, I focus on my scripture study and doing things that are constructive. That really helps an awful lot.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to have a pillar in your life that's stronger than all of the changes and all the chaos around you.
Mhm.
But so, what other positions, careers in aviation, looking back, where you're gone a lot, would you do things differently, or could you recommend maybe other
Well,
positions?
yeah, I made a list in anticipation of this. There are a lot of different career avenues in aviation. Obviously, being the pilot is the one that people think about the most. And pilots, at the moment, there's a huge shortage, and that's likely to remain so as long as the world as we know it continues. And so, I tell you what, you can get into aviation, work really hard, get your certificates, and within 2 or 3 years, get a job where you're making six figures. And
Yeah.
that's where I would say the biggest. And it ticked me off when I showed up in doc at my current job, and I've been doing this for 25 years, right? And I get these, web behind the ears 23-year-olds. They're doing the same job as me, getting paid the same amount. I'm like, man, I've been working so hard, paid my dues for so many years, and these young bucks are here for the same job. And like at FlexJet, they're now one of the highest paying places in the country.
Okay.
Other than the airlines, you can make more at the airlines. I have no desire to fly for the airlines. I hate the airlines. I hate busy airport terminals, all the crowds.
Yeah.
Just shoot me now. I don't want to do that. But
So,
so there's
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
So there's pilots, flight attendants. Again, you can make good money. I've got a cousin. She went in. She became a flight attendant. The cool thing about being a flight attendant is you don't really, as far as I know, don't need to have any real prior training or credentials. I think they'd really like you to have like a high school diploma or something like that. But um, flight attendants have great benefits. They get paid well, and that's been a great option for a lot of people. Uh, Personally, I don't really want anything to do with flight attendants, which is one reason why I don't have a flight attendant, because there's all kinds of messy situations that can arise there. But even though I don't want to work with a flight attendant, doesn't mean I'm not saying that being a flight attendant isn't a good career choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, then there's the mechanics, the what they call airframe and power plant mechanics and A&P. There's also avionics mechanics. You can go and get certified as a mechanic at various levels within a year or two. Those guys can make pretty good money, um, and you're home every night.
Yeah.
And one great thing about the whole mechanic thing is do that for 5 years, you could feasibly open your own shop. You can be self-employed. And in terms of general career advice, my advice for anybody in terms of general career advice is try to pursue an avenue where you can be self-employed.
Hmm.
Study business, study finance, and um, accounting. Understand how the numbers work. Understand how business works, and then whatever your specialty is, if you can turn that into a career where you're self-employed, that's where you're gonna have the best lifestyle, the most flexibility, um, and make the most money potentially.
Right.
Aerospace engineers, it's a massive industry. There's lots of colleges and universities that offer training in engineering. Aerospace engineering is a big one. In Wichita, where I live, they've got that available. With technology being where it's at, with just all kinds of new propulsion and all the computer simulation and everything going on, that can be a really exciting field, and it pays well, pays very well. Flight dispatchers. The airlines use dispatchers. They review every single flight. They look at the weather. Nowadays, they have all kinds of fancy computer software that does most of the hard work for you, but they still need humans to look over this and be in contact with the people in flight ops management, be in contact with the pilots, and you can get certified as a flight dispatcher in just a few months.
Hmm.
Last I checked, the training is probably at this point, I'm guessing around $13,000 to $15,000. It's probably about a 2 month training. You could probably do a lot ahead of time, but you're going to learn a lot about meteorology and lots of aviation stuff. But at the end of the day, you get certified as a dispatcher. You go to work for Delta or United or whoever needs dispatchers, and those guys they'll start you out making maybe 70,
Hmm.
$80,000 a year.
Wow, that's helpful. That's very helpful. Yeah.
Another huge opportunity is air traffic controllers. I was just reading an article a few days ago, and I sent a text to my oldest son saying, "Hey, the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, really needs air traffic controllers, and there's a huge opportunity." And those guys start out at like 110. Your average air traffic controller is making 145,000 a year.
What kind of
Those
person do you have to be manage that stress where you're responsible for all these flights?
someone who's analytical, someone who's good at keeping track of details, um, someone who likes bossing people around. It's really, being an air traffic controller is not everyone always imagines being an air traffic controller is a super stressful job. It's learning how to manage that stress
Yeah.
and be able to take a big picture and to divide into little bite-sized pieces, and you kind of know if you have the personality or you don't. It's more
Yeah.
of a matter of just personality and aptitude than anything else. Maybe if you're good
So
at geometry, maybe you're better at that. Um,
so to give some background, ATC, air traffic control, so you're communicating with pilots and giving them directions on where to go, how high to fly, general
yeah, so
directions. You're directing these. It could be hundreds of planes. Well, hopefully not that many at the same
just
time.
just just a quick little synopsis of air traffic control. When I go fly, someone's filed a flight plan. Aircraft type, equipment on board, fuel on board, where we're going to go, the route, etc. And so when I go to do a flight, I'm going to call an air traffic controller who does the clearance delivery frequency, and I'm going to ask for clearance. And they're going to give me my initial clearance. They're going to say, you're cleared from this airport to that airport. Starting out, you're going to fly this departure procedure or runway heading, or you're going to turn left to this heading, you're going to go up to this altitude, and then they're going to give you your route and uh, and what to expect, and they're going to give you a clearance. And then after I fire up the engines, I'm going to talk to ground control, and they're going to give me directions on taxiing from wherever the aircraft's parked to the runway. They're going to say taxi to runway 35 via Alpha Foxtrot 3, then Bravo across runway 31, and then hold short runway 16 left to contact tower. And they're going to tell you what to do. Then you're going to talk to tower control, and tower will have you. They'll say clear for takeoff, and they'll give you your initial takeoff clearance if you don't have one already. And they're going to be in charge of the airspace immediately around the airport. You're going to talk to departure control. They're the guys that are kind of more a little bit further away from the airport. maybe above 4,000 feet up to 12,000 feet. And then you're going to talk to air route traffic control or center control. And those are the guys who are going to talk to the aircraft that are above 12,000 feet up to 50,000 feet. And
Right.
so they're all these air traffic controllers, they're divided into sectors, and so one air traffic controller has a fairly small, as it were, area that he controls. And they have protocols, they have procedures, they have corridors, and all you're doing is following protocols and making sure everyone's being funneled through from point A to point
Hmm.
B without crashing into somebody else.
Right. That was the hard part as a pilot. I never got to the point where I could control the plane and then take all these notes. Like when you land the plane, like land, Alpha Bravo, blah, 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 and all this. Like after about the second direction, I was confused because I was still trying to figure out how to land the plane. But
Yeah, and it's like when I've learned how to fly, it was at Provo Airport. We did not even have air
yeah,
traffic control there at all. It was all just open frequency. Everyone announced your position, and then
yeah,
like going up to Salt Lake International, all of a sudden you're playing with the big boys, and and all of a sudden you got to talk to these guys, and that was intimidating. It
yeah.
was
And they don't talk slowly and clearly. It's like it's not like a
right.
new language you're talking. But
Well, generally it's clearly, but not always slowly. And when you're starting out, they'll tell you, "Hey, announce that you're a student pilot."
yeah,
And you can and I've heard guys with 10, 20,000 hours come back to ATC and say, "Look, Senator, I come from Texas and I talk this slow because I think this slow, and you need to talk a little bit slower." I've heard pilots with lots of flight time tell ATC to slow down.
really.
And I've done that myself. Like when you're trying to copy a clearance, and all of a sudden they
Yeah.
give you a clearance that's completely different than what you're expecting, and they're rattling off this clearance at a million miles an hour, and you have no idea what they even said. And you come back and say, "Hey, look, please repeat that, but I need you to talk much, much slower."
Yeah, yeah. To them, it's very routine, and it just spills out, and it's stressful. It's
Well, it's funny because I can kind of slip into that same mode myself where I can talk very quickly on a radio, and that can bite me in the hiney too, because when you check in on a new frequency and you speak quickly, they come back and they're like, "What?"
yeah,
And so when I like switch when I get switched frequencies, I'll be like, "Okay, Salt Lake Center, pause." Then I'll announce my call sign and my altitude, so it gives them a little bit of breathing space for them to actually uh, uh, comprehend what you're saying and who you are and what's going on. So
right,
there's an
right,
art form to talking on the radio. There's a lot to be
right,
taught to be said about doing communications.
right. So interesting. But what other careers did you write down?
I thought you never ask. So yeah, air traffic controller again. That's a huge, huge opportunity, you guys. FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. Of course, that's not a job you're gonna get right off the bat. But once you've got some good experience, once you've been in aviation for maybe 5, 10 years, if you want to go work for the FAA, they have great benefits, and um, you're going to be respected wherever you go. You're probably also going to be hated wherever you go. But
Yeah,
there you go. There's flight instructors. Of course, as a new pilot, you're probably going to find yourself as a flight instructor to build flight time. Once you get your ratings, you might have 200, 250 hours of flight time, and a lot of guys aren't going to hire you until you have at least between 500 and 1,000 hours of flight time. So a lot of guys, in order
yeah.
to build flight time, they'll become instructors. But those are kind of more your entry level instructors that teach private instrument commercial training for newer pilots. I also was an instructor at Flight Safety. That is the world, the top flight training company in the world. It's an international company. They teach all the big jets. They're all over the world. And so like for me, I taught the King Air 200 and then also the King Air 350. And I
Hmm.
rubbed shoulders with the guys flying, teaching the Cessna citations and and all the other jets and whatnot. And so there's guys that make careers out of teaching at flight safety or CAE or one of these other flight training companies.
Right.
I didn't like it. I didn't like spending my life in a cave. Had a hard time talking about it, and not doing it. What's hilarious about that is you guys who are like retired, they lost their medical, which is a
Hmm.
big topic right there. But they're teaching airplanes they've never actually flown. That's
That's
kind of
interesting.
embarrassing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's airport management. I actually have a brother-in-law who is the airport manager over and up in Loveland, Fort Collins. He's um, pretty much runs that operation. That can be a lot of stress. Um, but he's home every night.
Yeah, right.
But then he enjoys running like they got the snow plows and they got some heavy equipment that they operate and there's lots of maintenance that goes on at airports.
Hmm.
There's things there. Aviation law. If you want to be a lawyer, go into aviation law. Those guys make bank, and there aren't very many of them.
Hmm.
The FAA is afraid of aviation lawyers.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh. I think they're afraid of anybody.
they're afraid of the lawyers. Everybody's afraid of the lawyers.
Yeah.
Tell you what. Flight ops management. If you're the kind of guy that really likes to be involved in everything and tell everybody what to do and be the hero all the time, a lot of pilots they'll get into admin and they'll be the chief pilot, director of operations, um, various admin positions. I'm not a fan of that. I've had the opportunity to do that several times, but those guys are always on the phone. They never get away from their job, and
Huh.
it's a lot of stress. Then there's sales and marketing. Most of these companies have people that need to market and advertise, get more customers, get more clients, get more business. So guys that get into aviation sometimes get into the sales and marketing thing. If you're a slick um, guy that likes to talk and likes to be charismatic and sweet talk people into buying stuff, then maybe you could do that. Then of course there's also what they call FBO management. These facilities where the private jets park and get fuel and get maintenance. Those are called fixed base operators, FBO. And so um, some pilots get into FBO management where they're a manager of one of these facilities and then they help run the place.
Hmm.
So that's the list I had.
Oh, very nice. So, a question for you, and we'll probably wrap this up because I've taken a lot of your time. But if you know someone in high school right now that has an interest maybe in being a pilot or an interest in aviation, what career courses, what would their plan, what kind of plan would they make to get to present themselves so they could be in a better position even in high school? What kind of classes, or is there anything that they should plan for?
Well, one thing I've told my boys is, the world we live in is very, very technology driven world. And so my advice for anybody is learn all you can about math and science,
Hmm.
um, physics, electronics, learn the science, take all the science classes you can. Um, if you can learn about meteorology, that's very, very helpful. So your earth sciences, and you can start you can become a student pilot at 15.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to be a pilot, go down to the airport and be a pilot.
Yeah, right.
um, it does cost a lot of money. It costs way more now than it did when I was going through. I think
That's
when I went, I think my parents helped finance my flight training. They paid about $20,000.
yeah,
Now that same training is probably going to cost you more like 80,000.
right. and that's why I kind of discontinued what I was doing, is because my personal income was going the wrong direction. It was going down, and I was spending about 2,000 a month because I figured by the time you rent the plane, pay for your instructor, and all the some of the stuff, other stuff I was having to buy, it was about 200 bucks an hour just to get, per hour. You've got to have at least 40 hours to test for your license, and it was going to take me probably 70 or 80 hours. So it adds up. But if it's a desire, I think, do it. Set the money aside, work hard, and put the time in, you know.
Well,
Um,
and now they got all kinds of programs for aspiring pilots. The airlines are dying, so they're helping to sponsor people. You can sign contracts with these various airlines. Well, they'll basically co-sign on the loan with you. People are being hired by Delta and United before they've even gotten 100 hours of flight time.
wow,
So
really?
there's a bunch of there's I don't really know much about it, but there are avenues available now to become a pilot, to become an A&P mechanic, where you can get a lot of help from your future employers.
Right,
So you do your research on that.
right. I've got a son now that has shown a lot of interest in mechanics, and I told him he likes car mechanics. But I said there's a program down here in southern Utah that has an AMP program. I said, man, maybe you ought to look at that because probably make a lot more money repairing airplanes and making sure they're safe to fly than repairing a car. But there's a lot
Yeah,
more
probably.
liability too. If that plane has a problem, it's your name.
Well, they've got safeties there. If you go to work for a aviation maintenance shop, they've got people that are supposed to check your work, and you're following written procedures for how to do stuff, and you're working with seasoned professionals. And but yeah, there's always risk. There's ways to get injured doing that kinds of work, and there's ways that people can be injured if you do your job wrong.
Right. Well, any other parting words of wisdom, life skills, or, if you had a chance to do things again, any parting thoughts?
If I had all over to do it all over again, I'd go into real estate.
Really?
That's where all the rich guys get their dough. It's
Is
doing
that right?
real estate. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting because my wife is a real estate agent and I haven't seen a lot of
Oh,
those
really?
dollars.
Well, I'm talking about real estate investors,
Yeah, yeah.
like the guys that go out there and they buy, fix, and sell. They get rentals. Um, they find the deals, as it were. The more real estate you own, and you can like fourplexes, duplexes, houses, whatever it is, you buy it, you rent it out, and then you keep on doing that before I got a neighbor who owns over 100 homes. That
Wow.
was when I talked to him 5 years ago.
Yeah,
And those all have mortgages, but they're all being paid off, and this guy's going to be a multimillionaire. He probably already is.
yeah,
But
yeah,
but you can't do that all at once, though. You got to get established in the career first, get
right.
credibility and whatnot, and then get into that.
Yeah, right. Well, I sure appreciate all of your time, Jared. I think this is very helpful. And if it's okay, maybe what I'll do is put your email address in the description field, and if they have other questions, they could reach out if that's okay with you.
Um, I typically don't put my email out there.
Okay, no problem. I'll delete that last part.
It's
That's
just
okay.
I don't want it out there online for everybody to get. Actually, my email is on my website at punitivetruth.com, but um, I don't know.
Well,
It's
we'll let him
just
go. We'll let him go there and find it then.
all right.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I
Okay.
sure appreciate all of your time, Jared. I hope there's lots of people that take advantage and listen to this. There's so many opportunities. I wished in high school I would have had access to some of this stuff and realized how many opportunities there are out there. I just think a lot of times as a high school student, you just don't know what options you've got until people tell you. So,
Well, the cool thing about aviation is you might get into one part of aviation and end up in an entirely different part of aviation. And you're also like with being a pilot, you're going to learn so many different things. You're going to learn tons about, airplanes, aircraft systems, meteorology, communications, even medical stuff. Um, and so it's actually one of the hardest things about being a pilot is you're supposed to know so much about so many different things. It can be very overwhelming.
right.
Um, then I'll just throw out there, it's crazy stressful training in a new aircraft, and usually there's a check ride, there's a test every 6 months. That can be very, very stressful. So if you want to be a pilot, you're going to have to study hard and be the kind of guy that can really study. And that's what scares most people away from getting into aviation is they're intimidated by it. Maybe they should be.
Yeah. Well, you're responsible for a lot of lives. So hopefully only the
Yeah,
best are doing it. So
yeah. Well, I've met a lot of stupid people that are pilots too, so I don't know.
maybe maybe you should send me pictures and names. And so before I get on board, I'll check the list. But
Right.
all
All
right.
right.
Well, appreciate your time. Thanks, Jared.
All right. Thanks. Bye.